Hi, my name is Eunice Santizo. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist. Thank you for joining me today in our weekly programs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Last week we spoke a little bit about attachment styles, and today we're going to focus on the ambivalent, anxious attachment style. As we went over a little bit last week, we discussed that this attachment style, growing up with your main caregiver, you were never really sure when they would show you their affection, when they would be responsive to your emotional needs, to your needs really. So when they would show you their attention, it was very affectionate, it was very loving, but you had to work really hard to get their attention because they were preoccupied with their own anxieties or their own just thoughts. So it was very difficult to get their attention. How does this affect you now? An anxious attachment style usually tends to want to be with avoidant attachments. Anxious attachment, some of the signs that you will see is codependency, low self-esteem, fear of abandonment, trust issues, and when you love someone, like you really fall and maybe could even be obsessed over that person. When you love really, really, like you give it your all, but there's always that fear of abandonment. And if you tend to go with an avoidant attachment, it's difficult because if they withdraw, you try to pursue, you want to communicate, you want to get this resolved. There's an issue, some triggers might be if they don't answer your calls, if they don't answer your texts, it creates a problem, it creates a trigger. And so you're very loving, you're very you're willing to give it your all, but it is difficult in the fact that you have that fear of abandonment and not sure if you're worthy of that love. So now, what are some things that we can do to help? One thing is to get more familiar with this attachment style. Understand the theory, understand what it means to have a secure attachment. And seeking therapy with an attachment-based therapist would be very beneficial because they are speaking the same language. Another thing that could help is working with your therapist to build your self-esteem, regulate yourself, learn to set some boundaries that are beneficial for you. Work on maybe possibly having that need of validation. Work on the fear of being abandoned, the feeling of not feeling worthy of love. So if you are able to work with your therapist on those things and have an attachment-based therapist, then you're speaking that same language and you're able to really work on creating the earned secure attachment where you'll have the ability to express your emotions genuinely, right? Like sometimes we might get triggered if our partner doesn't answer our calls, doesn't answer our text. And so we take that internally and we feel like it is something that we did. So bringing that out to light, hey, right now I'm feeling a little a fear of abandonment, or I don't feel worthy of your love. I feel a little bit like I need more validation. So expressing the real things that are happening in you instead of creating that reaction of, why don't you ever answer my text? You don't love me. Having that genuine, real conversation about what's actually going on inside you will really help the communication in the relationship. Of course, also if your partner is an avoidant attachment style, there's going to be a lot of complications there because they tend to withdraw if emotion is being shown. They're not used to that, so it's more like of a shutdown. So having you two each learn about your attachment styles, or learn about what triggers you have, what behaviors come with this attachment style, can really help you guys understand each other and understand how and what triggers you guys each have, and then really to be able to validate what that person is going through at that moment can really change things up for your relationship. Of course, if you find an attachment-based therapist, I myself am an attachment-based therapist, that would really help in learning this new dance that you guys can do together. That would definitely help. Lastly, I always like to encourage you to be more informed. So you've learned this, like, okay, I didn't know that there was attachment styles. I didn't know that from ages 0 to 5, where my caregiver, depending on how they behaved, would affect me in the relationships that I have now, and who I choose as a partner, who I'm more prone to connect with, and what triggers they might do, or what behaviors they might do that might trigger me and my attachment style. So now that you do have this information, it'd be very, very wise to search more about that style. There's plenty of books, there's plenty of research. If it's to do with couples, if you would search up Dr. Sue Johnson in EFT theory, emotionally focused therapy, that could be very beneficial as well. There is a book called Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson that I usually recommend for couples to read together, so that they can each learn the reasons why their partner do the things that they do, behave the way that they behave, and then learn the way that those behaviors trigger you. Why do they trigger me? So you each are doing different things that you've learned in order to survive as a child, right? You learned to, as an anxious attachment style, if your main caregiver was very, very preoccupied, you learned to go and try to get their attention more and more often. So these are learned behaviors that you did. And avoidant attachment might have learned, like, hey, I can't express emotions. It's not acceptable. So they learn to shut that part of them down, to avoid it. And so these different ways, behaviors that we picked up as we grow up are now, in the past, may have been used to protect ourselves, right? It's not going to be beneficial for you to avoid the preoccupied person, because you're constantly, you won't get any affection from them. If you don't try to get their attention, you will not get it. So those were behaviors that were picked up by you in that time for your benefit. So now that you're noticing this is not benefiting me anymore, the purpose of this action is no longer beneficial for me. So let's make some changes and try to create new behaviors that will be beneficial for you. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you for joining me. Next week, we will talk about avoidant attachment style, and we will continue on until we go ahead and discuss all of the attachment styles. Thank you again for joining me. I'll see you next week on Thursday at 7 p.m. Bye.